What's up builders, it's me, Jimbotron, back at you with another video. In today's video, I'll be covering a Wuyang build, but I wanted to give a bit of context on this one. So I've always loved playing raw weapon power Wuyang. However, this one truly embraces the hybrid lifestyle and gets a lot of its value off farming cash off assists. Let's get into it. If you're new to the channel here, I'm a Genji player who likes to do the math, and I tend to cash cap people like there's no tomorrow. However, then I run into this guy. This guy is called Ohm, and he mainly plays Wuyang, and he's on the top 500 leaderboard. I had the honor of playing with him, and the entire time that I was playing with him, I think I MVP'd 3, maybe even 4 times because of how insane this guy was. He was MVP nearly every round for the entire session we played, and let me tell you, we went on a very long win streak for drives. So yeah, this is his signature build. I'll be breaking it down, trying to do it justice. So the first power that you always want to take is Streamline. This is a really strong Wuyang power, as on every use of Rushing Torrent, you give passive healing to everyone in your line of sight, which is nice. It's realistically going to make very small impacts in fights, but added up over the course of a round, this will farm a lot of stats. Additionally, anyone being healed by it will be assisted by you. So if they were to get a kill, you would also get partial amounts of the bounty on that kill. So you can contribute a lot towards fight value without even needing to actually connect a kill yourself. The next power you want to be taking is Pain Drops. I'm going to be explaining a lot more in the item section why you take this. However, Pain Drops on its own is also a really strong power. The description makes it sound like a 20% damage increase, but it's actually 80% because only the side 2 orbs are affected by the damage reduction. The middle one still does the full damage. This will also make your shots a lot more consistent. The third power that you'll be taking for this build is Undertow. Now, this will make it so that every primary fire hit you have reduces Rushing Torrent by 1 second. However, the splash damage counts towards this. So you don't actually need to directly hit to get the cooldown, so you can consistently do this. So now every time we use Rushing Torrent, we get a ton of self-healing and a bunch of team healing as well. Every time we wave, we get 3 primary fire shots instead of just 1, and every time we hit one of those shots, we will get cooldown on Streamline. You can just keep cycling it over and over again. Last up, we have Tidekeeper. I have this one in my own personal Wuyang build as well. The 1.5 seconds per second of healing is basically a 150% cooldown reduction as long as you have your active heals on. You can really quickly get your Tide back, which will allow you to activate Pain Drops more often, which will then allow you to activate Undertow more often, which will then allow you to activate Streamline more often. Everything in this build is all about constantly looping as much Streamline healing as possible, whilst also being able to use all your other abilities quite well because of Pain Drops and Tidekeeper. As for items, there's a couple of really unique pickups that he likes to get here. I'm going to go through some of the more obvious ones first though. Water College Hat is really good as it increases the duration on your Streamline passive abilities, so it gets literally 50% more value. On top of that, it also gives all of them a bunch of overhealth, which is nice because then you can mitigate as well. This is a must pick as early as possible. Oscillation Orb. This thing makes it so that your primary fire hits are super easy to hit, especially on aerial targets. I would always take this one. And then, one of the final obvious pickups is Hydro Cache, which increases your max resource. This is here for the good stats. However, outside of those strong blues, a strong and underrated pickup is Tidefall Basin. This will make it so that while you're in Rushing Torrent, you will passively regenerate a lot of ammo and healing resource. The increased healing uptime is nice. However, you're mainly taking this for the ammo restoration, because this makes it so that you don't need to reload during your Streamline ability. We already established we're going to be having a lot of uptime on that, so having no reload and additional healing on constant flow is really strong here. Now onto the epics. One that really stands out to me is the Super Flexor epic. Obviously this is hybrid because you're going into both passive and active heals, which is both AP and weapon power. I didn't actually know this until Ohm pointed it out to me, but you get given 3 Super Flexor stacks for a direct hit on Wuyang. I have reason to believe this is to do with the fact that he technically has 2 instances of splash damage for charged and uncharged hits. Every direct hit, you have 3 superflexor stacks. If you have pain drops, you'll just get all 5 stacks instantly, so you have a lot of uptime on this. 25 AP does a lot for your wave and a lot for your streamline healing. And finally, he likes to take Oceanic Ointment. The overhealth and the burn removal is just kind of a secondary effect here. We don't really ever get value from this unless Ashe is running a heavy burn build. However, we run this for the Empowered Orb splash radius. It increases the distance that you can get value from Undertow and Superflexor by a meter, so you have a lot more leniency on hitting people for the cooldown and ability stacking. Outside of that, we're mainly taking hybrid and weapon items. Most notably here, Jet Skates is really good, as it provides 10 out of 10 stats and adds to your mobility. Amari's Antidote is also very nice, as it will give 15 more weapon healing on top of the weapon power it already gives you. Ohm does like to run later into the late game, when he has too much cash and nothing to spend it on, as it gives 20% weapon power. I would personally swap this for a survival item. However, if you guys want more weapon power, you can also take this. Something I really want you to keep in mind when using this build is that just because it's a blue item, it doesn't mean it's any worse than a purple one, although that is how video game logic tends to work. This isn't the case here, as there are quite a lot of blues in Overwatch Stadium that severely outclass purple items. This is basically only for hero-specific items though. If it's non-hero specific, you will rarely ever see a blue with a direct purple counterpart. However, in terms of hero specifics, there are a lot. Like here for example, I wouldn't be upset in the slightest holding on to Water College Hat or Oscillation Orb until the late game. Although they won't provide absurd amounts of stats like the purples will, the secondary effects they provide are so strong for the build that I honestly think it's worth it. A quick critique I'll give to this build, because this is not my own build, is that I do feel there is a lack of survivability. There is quite a large amount of self-healing which makes up for that. However, you are quite vulnerable to being one-shot, as your health is carried entirely by the 25 health on your items, as a lot of the items here have 25 health effects. Last but not least, we are going to go through the matchups. This build is really good into low mobility targets that are easy hits for your orbs. Additionally, targets that don't have any form of mitigation so that you can't be blocked. Think like Ana, Junker Queen, that kind of character. The build does struggle a bit into flyers, as Wuyang specifically requires a lot of skill to be able to consistently hit flyers for your cooldown reduction. So unless you are like a pro Wuyang player, that's where this build struggles. Since this build does a lot of things very well, there isn't really much you could do to counter it that much. I do think that taking Cyber Venom might help, but I don't think it will make a huge difference. Overall, I really do enjoy this build. It's very fun to play, and I really appreciate how much effort my friend put into making this. So finally, let's wrap it up with the scores. As always, we start with impact. This is how well I think a build can carry a game. I'm going to have to give this one an 8 out of 10. I do really think that this has a lot of impact, especially from a cash generation point of view. However, Wuyang has a very high innate damage amount. If you have consistent aim on Wuyang, you will be getting a lot of value out of this. Also, Streamline allows you to influence fights that you wouldn't even be paying attention to otherwise, which is nice. For the early game, this is how well this build performs in rounds 1 and 2, and how well it sets you up for the later rounds after that. I'm going to give this one, yet again, an 8 out of 10. I think that Streamline is a very strong early game power, although it doesn't self-sustain quite as strongly as some of the other broken early game powers like Royal Bullets or Forged Under Fire. This really does add a lot to your team, and a lot to your own cash counter from all the assists. As for scaling, this is how well I think the build moves into late game. I'm going to have to give this one a 7 out of 10. I think that this build is very strong in terms of what it can bring to a group fight. However, I do think that it loses some points for me because outside of the amount of stats that you provide, there is very little utility outside of the singular healing amp, obviously. And finally, for fun, I'm going to have to give this build a 10 out of 10. Honestly, a really underrated aspect for me in terms of fun is how much cash you can get on a build, because it's always satisfying seeing that number be high. I don't think there is any other Wuyang build I've ever seen that runs more money than this, so for that reason, I'm going to have to give this one a 10. Anyway builders, that's everything for today. I hope you enjoyed. Make sure to like and subscribe and join my Discord if you want to see more content like this. Till next time builders.